Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the first of 3 short films that Reform is doing to set out our thinking on the priorities for the new government. Andrew Hornby, Director of Reform here. This film on productivity. We've heard the new Prime Minister set out her objectives of better outcomes in public services and more sustainable public finances, and we just think that productivity is at the heart of achieving both of those goals. So I'm thrilled to be joined to talk about this by Ellie Harridge, Researcher at Reform. Welcome to Amy Finch, Research Manager and Head of Education, and Alex Hitchcock, Researcher at Reform too. I'm thrilled you're here. Let me start with Ellie, please. You've been working a lot on digital and the opportunities of technology to improve technology and to improve productivity in the public sector. What would you choose as the 1 or 2 things which the new government should be thinking about?
So the government should basically focus on 2 areas to increase public sector productivity with the use of technology and digitization. The first should be the spread of digitization, which it has been doing with the sort of new digital economy bill. And basically what that potentially can mean is, for example, instead of using sort of paper forms, which have a high risk of, having human error in them, would be to simply fill out forms online, so that you would sort of better channel people into sort of the claims that they need or whatever it is. Because basically the cost of error is actually quite big. Right. Matthew Hancock, the new Minister for Digital Policy, last week at one of our events on technology and productivity in the public sector, basically outlined that 60% of the costs within central government can be attributed to the cost of error.
Really?
Which is just, people filling out forms wrong, the back and forth of having to phone government services to try and understand what went wrong. And then the second point, which is actually really interesting and sort of pervades all areas of policy, is that the government should sort of increase initiatives to share data across government departments to basically sort of break down the traditional silo model where little data is shared between, for example, the health service and other areas of policy.
Yes. Health service, criminal justice,
exactly.
Unemployment, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you, Ellie. So a sense of the opportunity from digitisation and then the very, very powerful agenda on data science and data sharing. Amy, you've been looking at the broader question of improving whole of government productivity. Can you again single out 1 or 2 things for the new government, please?
Yeah, well, I think it's worth just recapping what the scale of the challenge is, because we've had, since the last decade, very small average improvements in public sector productivity, around 0.1%.
Right. Now,
if you compare that to spending increases, that's been around 3% increase. So although public services in general over the course of since 1997 have been getting on average more money, we're not necessarily doing a better job of spending that money. Right. So that's the challenge. Now, how do we counteract that? How do we address that? So one of the key things is just to measure what actually matters to citizens. So productivity is quite sometimes seen as just the mere relationship between inputs and outputs, i.e. the size of your workforce and how that delivers for the number of things, the activities that you do. We think you should take a broader outlook and look at value for money, so look at funding and outcomes, and look at outcomes that matter to people. So, for example, in the prison service, currently the way that we measure prison performance just looks at data, for example, jobs, and housing on release rather than longer-term outcomes such as reoffending, which has to be a core thing that the prison service is there to achieve. Hospitals are paid for by activity rather than on the actual quality of life that people have. So we as a are actually incentivized to do more, to have perhaps a less healthy workforce, less healthy patients coming in. So we need to address that. And the second thing is to look at institutions. So work that we've previously done looking at schools shows that there's no clear relationship between spending per pupil and outcomes. so attainment at GCSE, even when you take into account of deprivation. Similarly, you've done work on prisoners. That shows huge variation in the different reoffending rates and the well-being of prisoners in those institutions.
Right.
If you're going to address productivity, you have to look at the variation within departments as well.
Thank you. So again, I think a sense of the scale of the opportunity which the new government inherits. And Alex, can you complete this film by please talking about your work on procurement? It's such an important thing the government does, and the public sector is engaged with other organisations to deliver services. Again, could you please give us one or two priorities, please?
Of course. So if government wants to get more for less, I think a key area it has to look at is procurement of services. It currently spends well over £200 billion a year. So there's a huge opportunity for government to be more efficient in delivering these services. The first key area here really is complex human services. Now, within the first 100 days of this new government, there's a real opportunity because government is currently procuring welfare to work service, a new iteration, which is called the Work and Health Programme. And really government has an opportunity to eliminate barriers to market entry that have been seen in previous procurement. So things like contract size, things like administrative barriers, and that enables them to level the playing field to ensure the widest base of suppliers can enter the market, compete for services, and then deliver the most efficient services for people using these employment services. And the second has kind of already been touched on, which is the use of technology. Now, of course, this can radicalise procurement in 21st century. The last government had an aim to create a new procurement marketplace. Really, it's identified problems such as people procuring services, focusing too much on procedures. And so if you look at the Ministry of Justice's procuring of tagging contracts, this has rumbled on now for 4 years, which of course increases the spending to taxpayers. And if government creates a digital platform from which it can procure services, an Amazon-like platform, this can be done almost instantly, save the taxpayer huge sums in terms of procedural costs, and in fact get better outcomes for the services that it buys.
Thank you. Let's bring it to a close. We could talk and talk, but we'd like to keep this film short. So not a dry subject, productivity, and tremendous opportunities for the new government to improve services and improve outcomes for citizens. We think there's huge opportunities. It's going to be a huge part of our work going forward. We really look forward to engaging with you on the subject going forward. And thank you so much for taking the trouble to watch this film today.